It's getting late, too late for some of the people we serve to even be awake, though I imagine many are. Not by choice, a mother in the Central Valley is awake, staring at her kitchen table, trying to work out where her sick child can receive the medical care that child needs, now that a federal grant supporting the only rural health care center in her community is in limbo. A federal employee is awake, trying to figure out how they'll make the rent next month if they're laid off. Maybe they spent a few decades serving this country overseas and were just called back home. Now what? People around the world are awake, watching humanitarian help. That means their next meal or safe harbor from disease has disappeared, wondering why, in their time of most need, their longtime ally has decided to abandon them. Because the Trump administration has turned so many of our lives into a series of question marks. Because this president and his cronies like Elon Musk and Russ Vought are putting politics and profits over people's lives, over people's livelihoods. Chaos seems to be the watchword with this administration, but the chaos is not a consequence of this. The chaos is the goal. The chaos is the purpose. By throwing everything at the wall, they can create confusion. They hope to muddy the waters while opening the floodgates. Unconstitutional executive orders, illegal memos, illegally accessing private citizens' data. You name it. The scope and the speed of these actions is almost impossible to comprehend. And the impact is incalculable. This is all part of a larger effort to consolidate power, every possible power, in the control of one man, well, maybe two men, so they can plunder the country to benefit themselves and their billionaire buddies. What is the story of what they're doing here? How does this all fit together? And it fits together in this way. This is an effort to try to consolidate power, all the power of this government, in the hands of Donald Trump and a few of his hand-picked, very wealthy billionaire friends. It is designed to consolidate that power to essentially take the resources of this country and enrich themselves and their friends. An effort to enrich themselves which would not be possible, will not be possible, if our system of checks and balances work. But if they can somehow take apart these institutions, if they can somehow persuade or demand or cow the people in this institution and the House of Representatives and the courts and the Supreme Court, if they can prevent us from playing our institutional role as a check and balance, then what is left between them and the Treasury? Nothing. Nothing. And so this is the goal. Discredit the government, dismember checks and balances so that they can raid the till. Checks and balances be damned. Congressional authority be damned. The president wants to steamroll all of that, and at the moment it appears he is succeeding. But Donald Trump can't do this on his own. He needs enablers to subvert our laws, enablers to divert congressionally approved funds. Sure, everyone knows Elon Musk, but it's not just Elon Musk. And today we consider the nomination of the systems engineer to lead the Office of Management and Budget, probably the most important agency no one has heard of. And that engineer, that architect of this effort to strip the country of its resources so that it can be plundered by the president and his wealthy friends, the architect, the engineer of this, the one who will make the trains run on time, the guy that stops the train to allow the highway robbery of that train, is a man named Russ Vought. I remember visiting Pakistan. Now, Pakistan probably doesn't have a lot of great things to say about the United States much of the time, which I think and I recognize is frustrating. when you're trying to help and doesn't seem like anything you do is enough. I get that. I totally get that. But I remember when an earthquake struck northwest Pakistan, and American helicopters were helicoptering in relief. And a toy became very popular in Pakistan, and it was a replica of an American helicopter, because we suddenly became associated with helping people in their time of need. Probably the single most valuable diplomacy we had done in years. I guess we're not going to do that anymore. Oh, now we will do all that we can. We're here all night. We'll be here as many nights as it takes. We will raise public awareness of this unlawful scheme. We will use litigation, and we are. We will use every tool at our disposal. But it shouldn't be just us. It shouldn't be just us. I think a lot of Americans are wondering now whether the Constitution is so brilliant after all, whether it is adequate to meet this moment, a moment that our founders really anticipated, when we would have a demagogue who would ride the whirlwind of the confusion that he sows. Well, I think it is a brilliant Constitution. I think it's the best in the world. But it's not self-effectuating. It depends on all of us. To work, it depends on all of us. The genius of the Constitution is not that we are today where we are, where we have a Supreme Court that said the president is above the law. We have a president acting like he's above the law. We have the administration bringing in unelected billionaires to take data and who knows what else. We have terrible national security breaches and not a murmur of dissent about them. The genius of the Constitution is not that this is happening, but that it was forestalled until now, that we got through these more than 2 centuries without confronting this. But this is where we are, and this will be the real test of our Constitution, what it will mean in this moment. So let's turn quickly to the funding freeze. How does that fit into this effort? There was a memo, as we know, to freeze all federal funding, federal loans and assistance. We saw the reports, the days of chaos. We saw hospitals wondering whether they would get funding to keep their clinic doors open. We saw parents wondering whether their child care would be available, seniors wondering whether they would have the services that they needed. And for what? Once again, this is an effort to prepare to raid the Treasury, to take the resources that belong to the American people and use them to fund a massive tax cut for those who don't need it. Now, I represent a state that has been battered by natural disaster. So I take this very personally, this freeze on federal funding, because my constituents need the help of FEMA, they need the help of the SBA, they need to know that as the government has been there for every other state natural disaster, it will be there for us. And the idea of freezing that funding and inhibiting that recovery so that there can be just a bit more money for Donald Trump and Elon Musk and his allies is anathema to my constituents. And it should be unacceptable for all the rest of us. Mr. President, I yield back.